what we draw can become reality, so it's important to get it right. There are details everywhere we look, but let's take it one line at a time. Today we're going to look at a popular detail, a section of a brick veneer building at the slab. Now in your CAD file it might look a little something like this, a wall on a slab. It's nice and simple, but this isn't what it really looks like in real life. We'll need to add some details that look more like this. But let's bring in some real-world examples, as well as some 3Ds to get a full understanding why that's the case. The brick veneer building is probably one of the most common forms of masonry construction. Things are usually kicked off by leveling the site. Before pouring the slab, the formwork is set up first. And just like its name, this gives our slab its form and shape. This rebate / step in the slab is where the brickwork sits, as well as a space for a cavity. A cavity is just a gap between the brickwork and the timber wall frame, and the slab the wall frame sits on. I typically allow 30 to 50 mil. This gives me a good bit of tolerance above the minimum 25 mil that's required by the construction code. Next up, the high impact waterproof membrane is placed on the ground. This is like a thick plastic sheet that helps prevent water rising up through the slab when the ground gets soaked. Just a side note, concrete is typically porous. Porous just means it can soak up water from the below wet ground if there's no barrier to the inside timber, which could create mold and rot. This membrane is brought all the way up the side of the formwork. Now, to avoid using excessive amounts of concrete, the area underneath the slab is typically built up. This can be done using waffle pods or a compact fill with binding sand on top. If it is a compact fill with binding sand on top, the membrane that we mentioned before goes on top of this. The sand creates a smooth, level surface that helps prevent sharp rocks in the compact fill from puncturing the membrane. The shape that we have here creates a beam. The engineers also sometimes add a chamfer to add strength to the internal corner. Next up is the reinforcement, which again is specified by your engineer. But what you mightn't typically see in a section detail are the bar chairs, which is what holds the reinforcement in position above the ground to what the engineers have specified. Then the slab is poured. After about a week, depending on the conditions, at this point the formwork can usually be stripped off. We'll still have the membrane on the outside of the wall, which needs to be kept intact as much as possible, because this area will be backfilled here. After this are our walls. We'll start with the stud wall that sits on top of the slab, just here. I've got a dedicated video on timber framing, so if you'd like to learn more about its terminology in depth, I'll have a link to it later in the video. Now, with the external brick skin, the first course is laid on a 10mm bed of mortar. Austral bricks and PGH bricks have great technical manuals with typical dimensions and information. After this, the termite protection is installed. A couple of options are granite guard or a steel mesh like Termi mesh. If steel mesh is used, it's stuck to the slab using a concrete adhesive and/or concrete nails. Next up is our DPC, our damp-proof course, / flashing, which is attached to the bottom plate. This helps divert any water that's been absorbed through the brick and has run down the back to the cavity. The water hits the non-permeable DPC and is then channeled through the weep holes. A weep hole is just a perp that's been left open, and a perp is a vertical joint between masonry like brick. Now, before the rest of the bricks are laid, the sarking is installed, which is laid over the damp-proof course. The brickwork needs to be tied to the timber structure. This is done using brick ties, which needs to be installed every 400mm vertically, which realistically means every fourth course, and 600mm horizontally. They need to be sloped slightly down, so that any water that hits it runs towards the brickwork and not towards the building. I also typically draw in the 10mm for plasterboard here too, and we'll also add in the skirting, also known as the baseboard.